Welcome back to another episode of the Sky Society podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Molly Wade. She is the Senior PR Manager at Amazon. Welcome, Molly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. Molly's visiting her family in Florida right now, so changing up the pace from your normal New York pace of life, huh?
Yes, yeah. I'm with the retirement community down in Florida. In rain, unfortunately, but still a nice change of pace for the holiday.
Yes. How long are you there for?
Just the week, so a couple days, and
Okay.
then popping back up to New York.
Back to New York. Yeah. Not too far, thankfully, hopefully from Florida to New York.
Yeah, no, easy flight. Just as long as there's no delays, it should be an easy trip.
Yes. Amazing. Well, Molly, we have a lot to chat about today. So Molly's currently at Amazon doing PR. She has an interesting journey of how she got there. We're also going to chat about some financial independence and making some financial decisions as it relates to your career. So lots to jump into. But before we do all of that, can you share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I live in New York. I've been there for just about 2 years, and have then bounced around quite a bit. So, I grew up outside of Boston, spent some time in Washington, D.C., and then San Francisco, and then Seattle, and now back to the East Coast in New York. I've been at Amazon for just over 5 years, and I support our devices and services business. So, that's the business that makes Echo and Alexa and Fire TV and Kindle and all those
Mm.
fun things that hopefully you've used and enjoyed yourself. And as you mentioned, I do PR there. I also work on a lot of our sort of launch strategy work, in close contact with the business team. So it's been very interesting. It's obviously really fun to work at such a huge company. And particularly right now, there's so much going on in the world of big tech. It's been a very interesting time to be here.
So for Christmas, do you give everybody an Amazon Alexa or Kindle?
My family have a lot of Amazon devices. Yes. I try to mix it up a little bit here and there, but yeah, everyone's pretty well geared out.
Yeah, I was gonna say they'd all be coming to you for every. I mean, Amazon has so many products, so you could literally
Yeah,
be giving them out all the time.
all the good stuff.
Amazing. Okay, so before you got all the way over to Amazon, we'll take a quick journey to how you ended up to where you are. So you had an internship out of college at the Trust for the National Mall. First, can you explain what that is?
Yeah, the Trust for the National
Yeah.
Mall is the official nonprofit partner of the National Park Service for the National Mall in Washington, D.C. So that's where all of the
Got
like
it.
monuments and memorials are, right in the heart of the city. And so when I started in college, it was a true startup. It was myself and the president of the organization, and I was like a little intern woman. And by the time I left, I think there were about 12 of us. So, it was fun to sort of see the organization grow, and support a nonprofit in sort of marketing and communications capacity.
Amazing. Yes, working in I think a lot of people have dreams of working in the nonprofit just because it's a way to kind of do what you love career-wise, but also get that fulfillment aspect, which I think is amazing. And you were there for
Yeah.
3 years, and by the time you left, you were the marketing and communications manager. So quite a journey from like college intern to marketing and communications manager.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you learned while you were there?
Oh my gosh, so much. I look back at that job so fondly because it was so hard and I had so much responsibility that I felt like completely underqualified for. But it was like a career boot camp. I felt like it was particularly challenging because it was a fundraising organization, and I was the only person there that didn't have a fundraising focused job. I mean, everything we did was fundraising, but like I wasn't a fundraiser. I was our entire marketing and communications department. So I built our first website. I did our PR. I like started our social media accounts. I trained our executive as a spokesperson and booked her for interviews. And then I had all these other things where it was like, this isn't a good use of our fundraisers' time. So Molly will do it. So, for example, I ran a national design competition where we put out a call to universities and like design firms across the country to contribute and submit ideas for how they would redesign this area near the Washington Monument that's sort of right now this like defunct stage into this like performance venue and shops and like this really cool multidisciplinary space that the millions of tourists that visit the mall every year could use and enjoy. And so I had to figure out like how to do that and how to make sure we got in front of the right people and then make sure we publicized it enough that we got the right submissions and then organize the selection committee and then ultimately like share the results of this design competition. So random stuff like that that really didn't have anything necessarily to do with marketing communications but needed to get done. And so it was a complete like I say, sort of career boot camp. We were in a very formal office. The men wore suits. I was wearing my little like Ann Taylor blazers to work every day with my Blackberry. And so I really learned how to be, sort of capital P professional, how to like show up on time, how to, go to a meeting with my boss, who is the president of the organization, and come correct with an agenda and all my things that I needed to accomplish in the limited time I had with her, how to speak to people who had way more experience and way more, background than I did, and be, competent, but ask smart questions. And I think the other big thing that I learned there was how to get a lot of work done really fast without lowering the bar on the quality, because there was just, I mean, my to-do list at that job was a 3 foot by 5 foot whiteboard, because there was always so much to do,
Oh
and
my
like I write
gosh.
something and add another. And so I just had to learn how to like really focus and like get things done in a very sort of methodical, fast way without letting the quality be compromised.
Do you
Which
have
was that's
any
that's really hard to do when you're doing something you don't have any experience doing.
I was gonna say that is really hard to do. Is there anything like specific that you learned there that allowed you to be more productive?
I think staying incredibly organized. I had, my whiteboard to-do list, I had my daily to-do list, I had folders, on my desk for all of the different projects that were going on. I would put a ton of time and thought into these one-on-ones that I had with my boss twice a week, because otherwise, like, I sometimes wouldn't see her otherwise. Like, that was my time with her. And so being incredibly thoughtful about what I needed to get out of that time, and being, like I said, coming correct, like everything was in the right order. She got an agenda, I got an agenda, we went through everything really methodically. And then asking a ton of questions and like having the humility to know that I didn't know everything, but knowing that the people around me, wanted me to be successful, and valued what I was doing on behalf of the organization. And so they were willing to help me out, and help me figure out how to do some of these things that I had no idea how to do. And I also Googled a lot of things. Google's a
Google
very useful tool when
University.
you're don't know what's going. Yeah, totally.
Amazing. Wow, what an incredible opportunity that you got right out of college. I mean, even for me, my first job was very different, but similar in the way where I was just constantly had to learn things on my own the entire way. Like no one was there teaching me. And if I wanted to keep up, it was my own initiative that was going to get me there. And I think that's how you like, I very much think that's how you learn the most, is just by being thrown into something and having to figure it out. Like there's no better way to learn. So that's just such an amazing way, I think, to start your career. And so you were there for a little bit, and then for a while, I think a couple of years. And then you went over to Voce Communications and you were there for 5 years. So tell me a little bit about why you decided to make that switch and what you did at Voce.
Yeah, I just was ready for a change. I had been in Washington, D.C. for 4 years for college, and then for 3 years after that working at the trust. So I was more ready for like a life change than a career change. And so I actually quit my job at the trust without a replacement job and moved to San Francisco, which
Wow.
very risky. But I felt confident that, I would find something out there, and I had a strong resume, and people that, I knew I could use as references. And I ended up at Voce Communications, which was a PR firm supporting mostly technology and consumer tech companies in Silicon Valley. Um, and it was amazing. It was such a huge culture shock, because I went from this like very buttoned up Washington, D.C. office in a federal building with a security clearance to a PR agency that supported tech companies in the Valley, where it was like hoodies and jeans and like show up when you want, leave when you want. You're like, you're adults, we don't care. And so, I showed up to my interview in my little like Ralph Lauren suit, and everyone was like, are you auditing us? Like, what's going on right now? Why is this happening? So the culture shock was real, but it was great in that where I learned at the trust how to be, like I said, sort of capital P professional, like buttoned up. At Voce, their whole thing was like, you're adults. And so we trust you to get done what you need to get done. And if you need to be somewhere else to do that, great. If you want to be in the office, fine. And so that helped me really learn that sense of sort of like freedom, but also not taking advantage of that freedom, and how to sort of come and go in a way that was responsible, and how to show up in the office as a leader, but also lead by example and like take vacation when it was time to take vacation, or sit outside on a beautiful sunny day. So that, I think, culture wise, it was a great sort of two-step approach to my career. And then I got to work with some really cool clients. I was embedded at LinkedIn. I went down there 3 days a week for almost a year and sat with the PR team there, and got to go to like their all hands meetings and all that. So I got to experience what working at like a huge tech company would be like without actually having to go work at a huge tech company. And then I also worked with like tiny little startups who were just trying to get their business off the ground, and sort of everything in between. So it was working at an agency, I think, is such a great learning experience as well, because you get to have that exposure to so many different types of companies and industries, without having to commit. And so,
Yes.
you're at your one company, but getting exposure to all these different ways of working and perspectives and industries. And I just think that that's such a valuable moment in a lot of people, particularly in marketing and comms and their careers. And that certainly was for me.
Tell me how you had the courage and like was able to take that leap of faith to just quit your job and move to literally across the country to a new city. Like, how?
There was like a dose of crazy for sure. I also was lucky. My brother and so his girlfriend at the time, who's now my sister-in-law, lived there. So I had, a place to land, and, them to support me as I was sort of getting my feet on the ground. But the other big part of it was like just a little bit of blind confidence in myself, and like knowing that I had worked really hard at the trust for 3 years. I had a resume full of all kinds of different experiences and accomplishments. And knowing that I could, sit down in an interview and really sell the value that I could bring to a new organization. And I didn't have any like data to back that up, because I had only ever worked at the trust, but I knew that I had done a lot of really good work there, and I had the confidence in myself that I could sell that in an interview, and bring that same level of like diligence and hard work and team mindedness to a new place, and that they would see that in both my resume and how I presented myself in an interview.
Yeah, I love that you did that. And even similar, I was telling you how I moved here to Austin, but I knew no one when I moved to Austin. I a little crazy, quit my job, started my own business. With that,
Amazing.
why not just move to an entirely new place I've never been before? And sometimes like not even knowing how it was gonna work out, or not even having enough money to pay more than 6 months of rent, but like knowing that somehow it was gonna work itself out. And I that blind confidence, I think, is sometimes necessary, because you have to believe in yourself enough to know that it's going to work out,
Yeah.
even if you don't know the how part. Just like trusting that you
Yes.
know it will.
Yeah, I love that. That gap between like knowing it will, even if you don't know how, is so important. And that's why it feels like a leap, because you don't know like how you're gonna land on the other side. But there's
Yeah.
always something to land. There's always a landing. You just have to figure out how to get there.
Yeah. You just might not see it through all the fog or
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you were
Absolutely.
at Voce for 5 years. You ended there as an account manager before you moved on to Amazon. And your role in Amazon is in PR. So can you tell me kind of like how you made this switch over to PR, or why you
Yeah.
decided to?
Yeah. So Voce was a PR agency as well. And so
Okay.
at the trust, I had gotten exposure to so many different parts of marketing and communications. Like I said, I mean, I was like designing visual assets, I literally doing everything you could think of under the marketing and communications bucket. And then also some of this like other random stuff that I described earlier. And I think I just found that I really liked the PR aspect of it. I really liked coaching up my executive and booking her in an interview and seeing her do an amazing job talking to reporters. I liked talking to reporters. I liked writing press releases. And so when I moved to San Francisco, I looked at all kinds of jobs because when you don't have a job, you're willing to try pretty much anything. And I landed at this PR agency. Where we did PR on behalf of all these tech clients. And I really loved it. And I loved the media relations aspect. I also, one of the things that was great about working at an agency and that I would encourage anyone who's at an agency to do is I got super involved in like the business side of it. I was involved in new business pitching. I ran our staffing for a couple years there. I was involved in some of the like community building stuff that we did, which I loved because you have your sort of account teams, but if you don't branch out outside of those and do other stuff that's not focused on your clients, you sort of have a really limited understanding of how the agency works and who else works there. So I sort of dabbled in all of that, and then Amazon actually recruited me. I got an email on through LinkedIn, and I didn't usually pay attention to those, but I was like, well, it's Amazon, so like I guess I'll take the call. And so that's why I ended up sort of sticking with PR when I made the move to Amazon.
I love it's so funny because I know with the recruiters reaching out on LinkedIn, sometimes it's like you never know if it's real or if it's like worth your time,
Yeah.
especially when you're at a cool company. But I can only imagine it must have felt pretty good to see Amazon slide into your Insta DMs or
It
your
was. I
LinkedIn
was very
DMs.
flattered. And it was nice, sometimes half the time I feel like I don't even know the name of the company or like the agency that they're coming from. And so to see, like a name, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So tell me, I know you kind of mentioned that a little bit like when we first started the episode, but tell me a little bit about what your role looks like as a senior PR manager.
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit. So I've been there, like I said, for over 5 years. And one of the things that's been so exciting about working at Amazon is it's such a huge company, even staying within, supporting the devices and services organization. There's so many different roles that you can play within our team. And so I started at Amazon working on what we called at the time emerging devices. So that was stuff that was new to Amazon or new to world. The robot Amazon Astro that we launched last year was something I was working on 4 years ago, very much behind the scenes with the business, thinking about, when it was ready to roll out, how we would do that. So it was really cool, 4 years later to see it actually launch. And then I got the opportunity to work on a couple of acquisitions. We acquired Ring and Blink, which are both home security companies, and Eero, which is a home Wi-Fi company. And because I worked on those acquisitions, I ended up sort of focusing on our smart home business a lot more. And then I spent almost 2 years as the single threaded leader for our health and wellness business and launched the brand Amazon Halo, which is our version of sort of the fitness wearable and an app that supports it. And then for the last 2 years, I have been in charge of our cross team. We call them milestone moments. They're sort of these big moments during the year where we combine a bunch of our different businesses, so Echo and Ring and Fire TV and Kindle, into these big like product launch moments, where we obviously we get a ton of media interest and can make this big sort of splash in partnership with our marketing teams. We take over the homepage of Amazon.com for the day. It's like this big company-wide or at least org-wide effort. And as part of that, I also work really closely with our business teams on looking at the roadmaps that they've come up with and like helping suggest if we could hold on this product launching for a couple months and combine it with this one, we'd be able to tell a much more interesting story. Or if you could like speed this one up a little bit, then this could happen at this time of year where we know people are buying that kind of product. And so having a seat at the table and really being able to like talk to the VPs and SVPs of this massive devices and services org about, when and how they're going to launch these big product lines has been super interesting, and an exciting way to like still be doing PR, but much more sort of embedded with the business, whereas like before I was doing much more like media relations and external comms. So it's been an interesting like 5-year journey, all within the same team, but with a lot of different roles and hats. And then, the only difference between PR manager and senior PR manager at Amazon is more responsibility and likely some folks reporting to you.
What a journey, even
Yeah.
within Amazon. That's a
Yeah.
lot of things to touch and in just 5 years. And I know we went through your entire journey pretty quickly. So even just comparing that to your first role to like what you're getting to work on now is absolutely amazing. And I think a very inspiring journey to hear unfold.
Oh, that's nice of you
Um,
to say. I mean, nothing else. What you can like take away from my journey is that like you never know what the next thing is going to be, and like there's lots of opportunity to grow and evolve within this world of marketing and PR and communications without even having to like leave the company that you're at. That's one of the reasons I like it. It's never a dull moment.
I love it. Okay, so through all these career jumps, one of the things that you had let me know is that you are passionate about using your career to build financial independence. What are some of the decisions that you have made through this career that we just went over that have where you have put financial independence as the focus or on the forefront?
Yeah, I think the biggest one was the move to Amazon. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, but I was really happy. Like I had this incredible life in San Francisco. I had wonderful friends. I really liked working at Voce. I was, pleased with the work I was doing and sort of the growth path that I was on. And so, I got this call from Amazon. I talked to the hiring manager who ended up being my first manager, and she was just like an incredible badass. And I, in one phone call, I was like, oh shoot, well now all of a sudden this becomes a lot more interesting. And I went up and did like the day of interviews that you do at Amazon. And then I came back and I had a couple of days to like think about it. And I was talking to people that, know me well and whose opinions I trusted, one of whom was a former boss from Voce. And we were having lunch, and a lot of people had asked like, well, do you think you'll be happy in Seattle? Like, do you think you'll be happy going from agency to in-house? Are you excited about, the business that you're going to be working on? Those kinds of questions, which were all really important and really helpful in making this decision. But when I was sitting with this guy at lunch, the first thing he said to me was, moving to Amazon could change your financial future. And that was just something that I hadn't even really thought about. Like I knew I was going to be making, incrementally more money than I had been at Voce, which like anytime you take a new job, if you're not making more money, that should be a really intentional choice as to why. And so I was like, well, I'll be making more money. So like whatever. But what he sort of got me thinking about was like the difference between making a little bit more money and taking a job that you're already kind of excited about because it could change your financial future. That was the phrase that he used. And what he meant by that was at Amazon, you make a base salary, and then you also get Amazon stock. And Amazon stock has done really well for itself over the past, however many years. Obviously, right now, stock in general is like a little iffy, but everyone has confidence that Amazon stock will come back and do really well, just like it has many times before. And so him sort of opening my eyes to that as something that I should be thinking about and making this decision was so helpful. And it's something that now I've taken with me, even, as I've stayed at Amazon, the way I think about, my compensation conversations with my manager at Amazon, and the way that I'll think about making a move if I ever get to that point is certainly like, will I be happy at the company? Do I like the culture? Will the job fulfill me? Is it a good next step in terms of the growth of my career? But also, like, equally, if not as or more important, is this idea of like, how is this going to impact my financial future? And and thinking about that in addition to all these other things versus just being like, oh, well, I make a little bit more money. Okay, fine. So that was like that big sort of aha moment. But I would also say, even, moving from the trust to agency, I had to like get my life together in San Francisco. And so, I negotiated in a way that I would never have done before if I hadn't like worked my butt off for nonprofit salary for 3 years, and realized that like, part of the reason that I work, maybe not, this isn't true for everyone, but I think for many of us, we work because like we need to make money and have health insurance. And so you want it to be something that you enjoy doing because you spend so much time doing it, but it's also a transaction. And I think that it's so important to think about, do you feel good about the terms of that transaction when you sign that employment contract? Do you feel like you're going to get out of it from that company what you're going to put into it? And a huge part of that is like, are you going to get the money and benefits that you need to feel like you are in, control of your financial destiny? So I could go on and on, but I'll pause there because I've been yammering about it. I feel so strongly about it.
I can sense that. I love the passion that you're speaking about it with. I think it's such an important conversation to have because you're right. If you look at the fundamental reason about why we all have jobs, it is to make money, right?
Yeah.
Like most people out there are not financially set for the rest of their lives. So we're doing this because we need the money. And that's just one factor of it, of the decision of where we choose to work and what we choose to do, but it is an important one to consider. And I think especially with the women that I work with a lot who are new in their career is that they're so eager and excited to get into the workforce that the finance part isn't even at the forefront of what they're thinking about. They just want to end the job hunt.
Yeah.
They just want to get a job. They just want to be employed. And
Yeah.
it's scary having these conversations. It's scary negotiating for your salary because it's scary to ask for your worth, but it's so, so, so important. And I think even when you said about how Amazon changed your financial future, I would even argue that it goes beyond your salary and the stock options, but even just having a name like that is also something that would help you if you were to go to another company next. That's also like, it's kind of like why people go to Harvard or Yale, right? To get a name like that on.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That name brand helps for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And I felt really similar when I was starting out. Like I just wanted to go to work and like get my foot in the door and get started. And I figured, I had my whole career to like build up the financial part of it. And I think that that's a good instinct, right? Like, get started and like get in the door. But I also think that it's so important to think about where you're starting financially, because every job that you get subsequently will look at what you're making now and factor that into what they offer you. And, factor that into how, like, where they think they could maybe like, put you at the bottom of, their sort of salary uh, like buckets that most companies have. And so, even that very first job, yes, you want it to be something that you're excited about. And yes, you want to like start as quickly as possible and like get employed and, get going. But everything else is going to be based on that for the rest of your career. And, I mean, that's maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but like your next couple jobs, everything is sort of relative to what you made before.
Even your
Um,
promotions
and so
are,
I just think it's so important. Yeah,
yeah, they're
exactly.
percentage based increases or yeah, from what you're
Exactly.
currently
Yeah.
making. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, like I negotiated a little bit on my base salary at Amazon, but in hindsight, if I had understood better this mix of like base salary and stock, which is kind of an unusual way to get compensated, I probably would have pushed harder for a higher starting base salary, because everything since has been a percentage increase on that. And I started, relatively low for my level because I had worked at a nonprofit and then I had worked at an agency. And so they were able to, put me sort of towards the bottom. Now, you can get out of that. You can work really hard. And the people that do well and work hard and prove their value get sort of a bigger percentage increase and get bumped up within that bucket. But it's totally worth having that initial conversation and like sort of sucking it up and getting through the fear and the feeling of not being sort of great grateful for the opportunity that they're presenting you when you're early in your career and asking for more. The worst they can say is no. And like, as long as you're at a number that you're good with, like, it's always worth asking for a little bit more. And then if they say no, you take what they offered in the first place, or you walk, which is scary. It's easier said than done, but it's worth it.
Yeah. And your options aren't like, I think people are afraid because they're like, oh, then I'll lose the opportunity. But just in case anyone needs to hear it again, we've already talked about it on the podcast, but companies are going to just say, okay, you negotiated, like, actually, we don't want you anymore. They
Totally.
will,
Yeah.
they'll tell you like, no, or this is the best we can do. And then you can have all the information to move forward with, but you really have nothing to lose. You really only have something to gain of just like earning more money. And I always like to think about it in the long term of like, okay, oh, I didn't negotiate 5,000. I got $5,000 less. That's nothing. Well, what's $5,000 over 20 years? What's $5,000? Like,
Right.
if you compound that and you add it all together, it ends up being a lot of money. So even though like fighting for an extra grand when you're just starting or an extra 5 grand when you're just starting, that adds up over time. And then, yeah, even though like, and that's also the base that you set yourself at mentally of like, oh, I'm getting paid this much, therefore I'm worth this much. And then when I go to my next job, if I make, $10,000 more, that's huge, but that's only
Right.
again, because you yourself are relating it back to what your base salary is, because companies aren't allowed to ask you what you're currently making. But yeah, I totally agree on that. It's such an important thing and that not enough people negotiate. I will say one myth is that women ask for money less than men do, but it's actually that women ask the same amount as men ask now. So we actually are equal now, but I'm not sure what the stats are for how often they're accepted or how much women push, or if they just ask once and they don't ask again.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've heard that myth. I was under the impression that that was the case. So that's good to know. Good. Go
Yeah,
us.
I do a workshop with that uses Lean In. I don't know if I'm sure you know the book by
Yeah.
Sheryl Sandberg. And she has this whole like workshop and about like women and career and workplace. And one of the like questions is like, how much less likely are women to ask for a raise than men? And like the answer is like 0, actually. We're actually equally as likely to ask for
That's
raises.
good to know. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Fun fact.
Yeah.
So with these like this prioritization on financial independence, you don't have to go into like anything personal about your finances, but do you also look at things like outside of your salary of like investments, or kind of like how else do you think about securing your financial future?
Yeah. I mean, I luckily, because Amazon, compensates us in stock, like that, the investment part of, my financial life is largely through that. But I have a financial advisor, which felt really weird at first because like I'm not a millionaire by any means. And so I was like, why do I need a financial advisor? Because I'm not good at this stuff and I don't know how to do it. And I don't have a business degree. And so, she has helped me make decisions about, when I've saved up a big chunk of money and I, don't want it like sitting in my checking account, how to invest that separate. So I'm not, just completely, all my eggs are in the Amazon investment basket. I've been working in some capacity since I was like 10 years old. So I'm lucky that, my parents put a big focus on that growing up. And so I learned how to save money really early, but just like saving, like having a plan for how much money you want to save in any given year. And then a plan, whether it's one of your own making or one that you work on with a financial advisor, for what you'll do with that big chunk of money at the end of the year. And sometimes the answer is like spend it and go on an amazing vacation. And sometimes the answer is give it to a financial advisor and have them invest it for you. It's completely up to you. Um, and then I think the other thing is like, taking big bets on yourself. Like I'm buying a condo in New York and it's terrifying. I'm like sending, my life savings away over a wire transfer for this, 900 square feet of property in New York. But that's an investment, right? And that's something that, I've wanted to be able to do on my own for a long time. And I've worked really hard to put myself in a position where I can do that. And, that in itself will hopefully pay dividends, in a couple of years from now. So, giving yourself the opportunity to like spend some of the money that you've worked a really long time and worked really hard to earn, whether it's on a vacation or a home or, a cool car or whatever. I think that's also really important because we do work hard and it's not always, fun and roses and like the best moments of your life. It should be a lot of the time, but it's not always. And so you gotta give yourself those moments of like splurging and using the money that you've earned through your hard work on something that is like really meaningful and important or really fun and just like cool and frivolous.
Yeah, giving yourself permission to spend the money too is just as important as saving it. So
Yeah,
I think that that balance
totally.
is really healthy. What was the tipping point for you where you realized that like you needed to get a financial advisor, that this was like too much for you to handle on your own?
It was when I made the move to Amazon because I just was like, okay, cool. Like now I have stock. Like, what does that mean? What do I do with it? Like, should I never touch it? Should I sell it? Like, I just didn't know what to do. And I was at a point where I was making a good amount of money, relatively. And I was able to save a good amount of money. And so I was like, well, what do I do with, this chunk of money that's like just literally sitting in my checking account doing nothing for me. And so that's when I got a financial advisor. And I will say, like, I use the same financial advisor as my parents because, I knew that I could trust her. They worked with her for a couple years and love her. And so there's no like shame in using someone that your uncle uses or your parents know or
Yeah, it's probably the
your
best way to start actually, is just to ask
totally.
around. Yeah.
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 And it's been great. And it's just helped me like, ideally your money should be working on your behalf as much as possible. And so any amount of like passive, investing that you can do, income that you can have with, whatever money you've got saved is obviously going to be a good thing. And I just needed help figuring out what that could be for me, and doing it in a way that was like the appropriate balance of sort of aggressive and conservative for, where I'm at in my life, versus, someone younger than me could probably be a bit more aggressive. Someone older than me should probably be more conservative. And so having someone who understands that piece of it too is super helpful because I'm sure I would make like really terrible choices and lose everything.
And just to clarify, financial advisor, she takes a percentage of your income or your earnings, or is that typically how it works?
I think that's typically how it works. I've been really fortunate because she's got a relationship with my parents, and this woman in particular is just incredibly supportive of like women who are, in their, careers, helping them build wealth and financial independence. And so she just charges me a flat fee every year. And then,
Okay.
hopefully as I continue to like grow and, make a ton more money, we'll switch to a model that's better for her. But she very
Oh, that's
generous,
awesome.
yeah, giving me a break so that I can afford her services, which I wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Amazing. We love women supporting women.
Yeah, women
Love
supporting.
to see it.
Yeah.
Amazing, Molly. Well, this has been so much fun. Do you have any last piece of advice for women in marketing?
I would just say I think sort of we'll go full circle, like believe in yourselves. I know that's really cheesy, but I think that we don't give ourselves nearly enough credit, and we have achieved more than maybe we even realize, and we've got the potential to do even more. And so I think having that little bit of blind confidence, and the hard work to back it up is a really good recipe for success.
I love that. I love that. Okay, well, again, thank you so much, Molly. Where can our audience find you if they want to learn more about you?
Find me on LinkedIn, Molly Wade.
I don't know if Molly will respond to anybody other than Amazon, but you can give it give it a shot.
I will. I promise. I promise.
Well, thank you again, Molly. It has been so much fun going through your journey and talking about finance, which I love to do always. This has been so much fun. So thank you.
Thanks, Natalie.